We're back with Charles Hood. Charles, how are you?
I'm doing great. I am doing awesome. We need to talk about, first of all, sorry, I'm just jumping right in, but we've got Bryan Burk back this week for part 2. And I'm just super excited because he gave us a gift. And it comes up in this. Do we want to wait till after the interview to
Maybe
say?
We should talk about it afterwards. Yeah,
okay, let's tease it for now. Just say that we got something really cool from him. We're super excited. He doesn't even know what he gave us. He doesn't know the power. No,
that
he doesn't
unleashed.
Understand. No.
So
we'll come back into that after.
Okay.
But I guess I don't know. That's it. I'm just super excited to talk about that. I know we can't talk about it till after, so I have nothing else. Do you want to just get right into it?
Let's get into it. Let's make. I want to stress, if you turn off the episodes after the interview, stick around this time. We've got a little bit of a business to attend to as well, so please stick around. And obviously, Charles, I got to give my shout outs.
Oh yeah, please do.
I mean, this is my favorite part of the show. This show is brought to you by Jeremy Dillon and his amazing podcast, My Favorite Album. This is also brought to you by John B., Elvis Ripley, and Suchet. So we thank them. We could not do the show without them. And should we just get into it, Charles?
Yeah, let's do it. Bryan Burk, part 2.
Here we go. Do you want to talk about Tom and his amazing abilities?
Yeah, like what the producing, you're saying you learned so much. Well, tell us about the things you learned.
The thing about Tom is, first of all, there's literally no one I've ever met, and literally no one in the film business, or for that matter, outside the film business, who is nicer than Tom. Like his talent is only matched by how wonderful he is as a human being. There are no shortage of stories I can tell you of things he's done. There's no shortage of gossip and this and that, all that shit. None of them are about him being a bad guy, because nobody has a bad guy story about Tom. Like, he is wonderful, 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 wonderful. And that aside, and really funny and supportive and always learning. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, you feel stupid when you're around him, because someone will say something and I'm like, I don't know what that means. And immediately Tom will jump in and goes, so what is that? Like, he's fearless and just wanting to know everything. And the other thing is, he never settles ever, and for that reason, you don't want to settle, but it's never, ever, ever in an asshole way. It's always in, how can it be better? And he's just lifting up people. It's just, when he's my boss, not just as an actor, obviously, but as a producer. And it's a constant drive. I'll tell you what it is. He's well aware of the fact that when the camera is pointed on him or anyone else, it's permanent. So he just makes sure that if we're going to spend this time, let alone money, let alone effort, to go do something, regardless of what we're filming, it's got to be perfect, or as close to whatever perfect means. And I remember when we were shooting one of our pickups at the very, very end of the production, it's like, that close-up. This was on Rogue Nation, when it's on the close-up of the vent inside the listening booth at the beginning of Rogue Nation when the smoke is coming on. That should take 6 seconds, and it didn't. It was a lot of, is this the right angle? It was slightly this. Is this the smoke coming in? This light. Everything is so precise and not going over budget. That's the other thing. Like, he is not, by any stretch of the imagination, is he reckless. Like, he knows that there is a ceiling, and we have to stay within that box. But he also is just constantly makes you want to do better. And what I was going to say about Chris working on Rogue Nation, Drew Pearce came in and did a draft or two of this script. But again, the ship starts sailing, and Chris, who obviously is a writer and a director, we're now in London and it's about to start shooting. And every day I'd roll into the office and Chris was there and he'd be working on it. I would sit there with him, and my contribution was 0.0. Okay. Like, we would be talking about it and Chris would be doing that process of, like, kind of dismissing things and knowing what he wanted, but didn't really know clearly yet what it was. And I didn't even know how to contribute. And during the actual production, Chris would the fact that he's still alive is shocking to me. Okay, because he'd shoot all day, and then go home and write all night, and then bring it in, and the scenes would be good. And then Tom, it was so interesting because Tom would read them, and he would be, and again, could not have been nicer about anything. Was never dismissive. Was never an ass about any of the stuff. But he would always be like, well, there's a couple things, which is he really knows Mission Impossible. He doesn't necessarily have all the solutions of how to get there, but he knows it in his bones. And every iteration of it, because it started more serious, and then it went here, and then it had a combination of serious and comedy, then it went to the comedy version, and then it was becoming Chris's version, which is everything. And so he knows what the directors want, but he also knows what Mission is, which is it's such a unique. It's not James Bond, and it's not Bourne Identity. It's its own thing. So he would read the pages and he would say, yeah, it's good. And he goes, it's not Mission or something like that. Like, would often be a critique. And then Chris would go back and keep working on it. And again, he would always get it. But that thing where anyone else would read, myself, I'd read those pages and I say, fuck, this is really good. And Tom would say, yeah, it's good, but it's not quite Mission. And he just, in the nicest way, is able to keep pushing everyone. And Chris has won an Oscar. Like, he's as good as they get as a writer, and Tom working with him makes him do incredibly even better work. And I don't mean Chris, I mean everybody. Like, he just is able to keep everyone pushing higher than they ever do in a way where and by the way, in success, it's all of our success, but in failure, it's Tom's failure. It's his poster. I'm looking at you right now, and there's his giant head on the poster. So all of us want to make sure he doesn't fail, but he sort of wants to make sure none of us do, and that we're all like in this together. I'm talking about him in a way that I'm sure there's people listening and saying, like, how can he be that guy? Like, how can this guy be that? And I am telling you, I learned so much for him. And I know it's 4 a.m. and I'm zonked, and I've been up since 8 a.m. before, and it's not good enough. And you keep going. But I said this earlier, and I really mean this. That movie works 100%, Rogue Nation, because of Tom and Chris. My involved, and obviously the crew and everyone making it. But my sole role on that movie was making sure everyone didn't quit. And being around with the crew. It was a really hard shoot because you're kind of making it around. And I don't mean quit in a everybody was angry sort of way. It was just so exhausting. And that movie worked literally because, in fact, here's why that movie worked. It's Jake, who was our producer on the movie, managed to every single day say, oh, tomorrow we're completely changing the whole set and we're moving it to a brand new place. You have to remember, it's like building a new building every day. Like, you go into a new location and hundreds of people build a giant building from scratch and then knock it down. So we're all prepared to go into a set and shoot something. It's like, yeah, we're not going to shoot that tomorrow. So Jake was able to constantly be moving the pieces around. And then Helen, who was our production accountant on it, was able to make sure we didn't go outside of our box and be able to work. And Don Granger was invaluable in that process, a unsung hero, because in that process where, again, I had no idea how to contribute to that script and that story at that point. And Don was really in the trenches with Chris every night, kind of trying to figure out what it was and breaking it. But it was, Tom and Chris who just kept pushing it and making it work. And, I wasn't involved in Fallout, but watching Fallout, or for that matter, watching Top Gun and the new one, Maverick. And when I watched that movie, I know how much work went into it. And that is Tom pushing everyone in the best way possible. And Chris is one of those rare people who not only doesn't buckle under the pressure, but can rise to the occasion in ways that I haven't seen a lot of filmmakers do that.
Before we get into Rogue Nation, did you ever have a conversation with Harrison Ford about being in Ghost Protocol?
I don't remember any. The only one I had I had two. One was, we talked about Gene Hackman. Did someone bring that up? We talked about Gene.
He was going to be the secretary?
in 4. And we were talking to his I was talking to his agent at CA, who just kept saying, yeah, Gene's not retired or any version of that, which of course your hope starts getting up. And I forgot where he lives. It was somewhere in the Southwest. But we were like, we'll go to his house. We'll shoot on his front lawn. Okay, like I don't care where you want us to shoot. So we kind of went down kind of like a fake road for a while, and then that wasn't real. But we got lucky with Wilkinson, who's equally as great, and so that we got very fortunate. And then on Rogue Nation, what I'm about to say, I'd never even told Tom this story because it was so embarrassing. So there was a window where we were talking about bringing on Martin Landau.
Oh man,
for a role, and
in Rogue Nation.
On Rogue Nation, I can't remember the role. I can't remember anything, but it was all, he was amongst the million things. He was in the original series. So it had come up, and I immediately called his agent, and he was in. It was like a half conversation, and Martin was interested. And very quickly, it changed. We were doing this story, and then it changed, and we weren't using him. So I had the embarrassing, thing of calling back and saying, we're not going to use Martin right now, which was sadly horrible and humiliating, and I was an asshole. But
did that story involve older agents from because there was a version of the movie that had part of it set in the 60s or something, right?
I can't remember the story at all. I just know I made that call and felt like a horrible human being.
Do you remember the Drew Pearce draft, and do you have access to it that you would like to see?
I definitely have access. I don't, part of having OCD and being a collector is that you're a hoarder. And I never throw out anything, so it's somewhere.
Okay.
Well,
it's
if you happen upon it,
if you need 2 handsome guys to clean out your office, we're available.
I know you were looking for that mission hat with the 4, so I'm trying to find.
We have one.
We got it.
We only have one.
Yep. We only have one, so we do. Yeah, it'd be good to get another one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go down that rabbit hole for you.
Thank you.
But
Thank you. Yeah. That was a long journey. We ended up getting one finally.
Anyway, so there were little things like that where we would occasionally reach out to people. The whole Martin Landau thing was because it was happening so fast.
Yeah.
That it sounded like, oh, this could be a real thing, and it was good. Within 24 hours, he was in my head. He was in, and within 36 hours, he was out. So it was just, you don't want to, I'd be apologizing again to him now, but unfortunately, he's not with us anymore.
As a producer, how do you process things like, planning for a big, fantastic finale, and then McQuarrie and Cruise presenting you with this idea of, a foot chase through London and then a guy trapped in a glass box. I'm sorry. How did you as a producer sort of react to that and pivot, I guess?
I don't know. Again, because it's always kind of a moving target, and you have things we knew kind of the big set pieces, and we knew what we wanted to do. I remember vaguely Drew's original draft kind of gave you kind of a blueprint of what it was going to be. But then all the details is, what.
Tell us about this draft. We've been dying to know anything about the Drew Pearce draft.
Yes.
I have weird memories of things because it's early on, sitting at Bad Robot, and you'd be talking about, wouldn't it be cool if, and you would talk about things, but I can't separate in my head what were crazy ideas we had versus things that actually made it to the page. Obviously, I remember there was all this stuff. You've heard this ad nauseum from other people, which is, we started in the snow with the different team, and there was that whole big sequence.
That's Ghost Protocol.
Sorry, I'm mixing up all of our guys. Yeah. See what happens? It all starts running together.
That's why we're here.
Thanks for reminding me of. Thanks for reminding me of my work. How did Rogue Nation start? I'm trying.
We have heard that there was a prologue set in the 60s. Do you remember this?
Vaguely. It's overlapping a little bit in my head with the villain from the previous one. I apologize for not being able to. Clearly, my Alzheimer's has clicked in earlier than I had hoped. But yeah, it's all sort of running together. It's hard because there's such placeholders kind of all over the place, and you're moving pieces and trying to, things are also sort of based on where you're shooting. So, the reason why London ends up being where it takes place is because London is where we're shooting. And we fake no shortage of things everywhere you go, but it's the reason why so many movies end now with London blowing up is because they're all shooting their movies in London.
Yeah.
So but where was that kind of building? He had very clear ideas of what he wanted to get to. The journey was, how do we get there? And also that was the thing that was interesting about Chris, which was, Mission tended to get bigger and bigger. The stunts get bigger and this gets bigger, and there's no shortage of gadgets and all of that. And I sort of felt all of that was sort of secondary to Chris. Like he was more interested in the shoe leather, for lack of a stupider term, which was the actual, machinery of how it works, let alone the characters and telling this really intriguing story. And he loves the spy craft. Like that's Chris's world. Part of the reason why, and it took a long time to figure out that big plane sequence, because everywhere we went, Chris was like, yeah, that's like a location, or that's this, or it's like there's nothing to do there. And he had a different process than Brad Bird, because his thing was he just kept running into everything feeling like he didn't know what to do with it other than like some gimmicky, stupid thing. And my recollection was that by putting the plane thing, the big thing, other than the motorcycle chase, by putting that plane sequence at the very, very beginning, you were able to have a giant big stunt, be able to come out of the gates big and swinging, and then start settling into the stuff Chris loves, which is the characters and the humanity and the intrigue, as opposed to it being like just building the multiple different set pieces. And I think you could sort of feel that even in Fallout, which is obviously the ending of that was enormous and had all of that. But the movie works on so many different levels, that film. And that's where, I think Chris really shines. Like he can do those stunt sequences like nobody's business. But I think what he likes, as you can tell, going back to Usual Suspects or whatever it is like kind of creating those worlds, which he's still doing. He's just doing it on a much bigger canvas.
Was there a sequence that you lost in either movie that you really wanted to do?
Well, in either movie. Well, I mean, I thought the snow stuff would have been fun. Like I haven't shot something in the snow.
We're obsessed.
But Tom's had a couple of snow things between Fallout and the next one looks like it has the snow stuff.
Yeah, it looks like we're back in the snow. Yeah.
Let alone Maverick. So there'll be no shortage of cool Tom snow things. And when we were originally doing the motorcycle chase, earlier on, it had more levity to it. It lost all of the levity, or most of it, which at the time I was like, all right, well, it's not, in my head, it wasn't going to be as good. And then it's much better than I ever thought it would be. But again, I had the baggage of trying to do more of the comedy from Ghost Protocol and less of what Chris started turning into. Not that there isn't comedy in Rogue Nation, let alone Fallout, but I still had the tone of the previous one still in my head, as opposed to what he was turning into. And I think the trailer for the new one is as elegant as it gets. It doesn't feel at all like, they're never trivial, but it doesn't feel like just a Hollywood fun movie. It looks like an elegant Hollywood movie. And I know that's always what Tom and Chris always strive for, are those kind of timeless movies. And I feel like they've really turned the franchise into really its own thing, but not flippant at all. Like it's really about something.
The lighter touch for the motorcycles, did that come from, we just heard recently that the motorcycles originally went through the marketplace sort of in Morocco. Is that what you recall of that?
I don't remember that. I just remember on the chase, funnier things would happen, not as broad as Looney Tunes, but more comedic. Again, a little like Raiders. Okay. A little bit the funny version of what happens when you shoot a guy or this, or something happens, and how Tom is able to take out guys. They were small things, but it just had it was danger and exciting with a little more levity. And it's not in there, and to the benefit of the film. Chris just found his own tune. I think also he was trying to make it his own, still had the baggage tonally of another director, and I'm speaking for myself, not him. And but he really made Rogue Nation his own film, and further made it in Fallout. And again, I can't wait to see the new one and see what they've done. But that partnership between Tom and Chris is very unique. Like, they really understand each other. And I'm not obviously in the trenches anymore, so I don't know if it's any easier for Chris. But I can tell you he's definitely delivering in a way that a lot of people don't.
Well, Rogue Nation also developed the third point of the pyramid, which is Eddie Hamilton's editorial genius. So,
yeah, the best.
Yeah.
Eddie's value, again, another person who's so nice, it's like crazy. Okay. And the amount of footage coming in, but he also is kind of figuring it out as it goes along. And I remember on Rogue Nation, because you don't know what it is until it's there. And it seems a lot of people who haven't really made films, let alone seen the process, I don't think really understand. You've heard the cliche over and over how, a movie is made, or ruined for that matter, in the editing room. And Eddie really understood Chris, and for that matter, Tom. So a lot of those cuts, like really early on, really informed what this movie was going to be. And he is just kind of a magical guy. And he can very, very, he's so good at it that you don't see the challenge. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like when I watch Tiger Woods, hit a ball, I'm like, how hard is that? And I feel watching Eddie in the cutting room is the same thing. Like, he's just so gifted. So I think that, as you said, that pyramid, that trifecta of them all working together. And it's not just them, like, they've really assembled like a crew and a group that they work with. And it's just it's becoming a very well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And, I'm leaving out like our first assistant director, a guy named Tommy Gormley. Invaluable. If anyone should be on your podcast, it's Tommy.
We've been trying for him.
I just can't imagine Tommy wanting, like, he's so, disappears, okay, when he's not working, but on set.
You got to help us get him.
He is, again, couldn't be a nicer, sweeter person, and also the greatest general of all time. And it's funny because you come on in the morning, he's like, hey, everyone, how are you? He's really friendly. But the second he starts, nobody is more focused for the entire day. And he's looking around, and he knows every single thing that's going on and keeps it moving. And those jobs are, as all of them, are invaluable. And he is someone, if he would come on, would be great. But
he started on 3, right? He did 3, 4, 5, 6, I think, right? As first AD.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with him on a handful of films after that. And he's a godsend. There's so many. Like, what's popping into my head are camera operators that we work with who are amazing, or our Steadicam operator who's as good as it's shocking how good everyone is.
We've never had a Steadicam operator on the show. That'd be amazing to talk to somebody from the series. Yeah.
There's never a problem technically, which is what's so amazing, because they're doing shots that are impossible. And our focus puller is like never out of focus. And it should be. Everything shouldn't work. And it just does. So I know I'm kind of rambling right now, but that team, like Tom and now Chris together, they assemble just everybody's functioning at level 11. And
listen, we know we're running out of time, so we have to ask you some very important questions.
Yeah.
Which is, can you rank the movies? Try to put your emotional, baggage aside and give us your rankings.
Well, I have to eliminate. I can't rank anything that I've ever been involved in.
You were involved with some good ones, so you can.
I know, but I can't comment because I only see things that I wish I could have made that better.
So 4 and 5, we won't engage with those.
Like Rogue Nation should have shot all that stuff in IMAX on the plane.
We agree.
And we didn't.
Yeah.
At the last minute.
Love that.
Because again, it's moving pieces around to be able to get things going, and it wasn't inexpensive to do that on IMAX. So I regret having to cut that. And not just me, everybody. It was a group decision. But so it's hard for me to look at anything and just say that. So let me eliminate those. I don't know. It's really hard to say, because I'll say something that Brian De Palma fans and there's no short of them, will probably not agree. I think his Mission is the best movie he's ever made. And there's plenty of films by De Palma that I love. So it's not really disparaging those, but again, having worked with Tom, I think Tom brought Brian De Palma to do the best work he's ever done. And there's things in that movie, even separate from the CIA sequence, which is perfection, is just people just rise to the occasion. So I think that Mission was fantastic. I can't really comment on John Woo's because I haven't seen it as many times. So I don't really have an opinion. There's things in it that I love. And John Woo for me is, as good as it gets. I think JJ's was great. I think for multiple reasons, which is he started finding that real balance of comedy.
Let me just ask you this though, Brian. When those dailies came in and those shots were so tight.
On which film?
On 3.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't producing that one, but when you saw it in the movie, did you think he went too close, too often?
I mean, I can see that completely. Don't forget, I was in the TV world, so I was used to that. So I didn't really see it through that lens, but I found it emotional in a way that most of those films weren't, and that he created. I just felt it was like uniquely different for all those films. Any of those spy films, he made it funny and emotional, and there was you cared about it in a way that I hadn't in anything before, that or any other film. And then I'm eliminating Ghost and Rogue for right now. And then, I don't know, Fallout was pretty spectacular as well. They're so different. It's hard to comment. It's why the next one to me just feels like this culmination of everything, where, I don't know, there were things, maybe I'm biased. Like there were things JJ did in his that I loved tremendously. I just felt it was so uniquely different than not only the previous missions, but any of them. It's not like the James Bonds. It wasn't like any of the other spy films. It was kind of the stuff he'd experimented and played with on Alias now was on a much bigger scale. But I really feel like Chris and Tom have found what Mission is supposed to be right now. So I think Fallout is really on the path. I don't want to say just yet because Fallout for me I loved, but I have a feeling the next 2 are going to be my favorites by far.
Well, how about this for an easier question? Do you have a favorite Tom Cruise hairstyle in the franchise?
Maybe easier, but it's a more important question, I think.
I like Tom with short hair.
So you're number 1. Fallout, Rogue Nation's pretty short.
Rogue Nation's medium.
It goes up and down.
I feel like 1, 3, and Fallout are the shortest, right?
1 is too short for me. 2 is too long for me. 3, I liked it. And 5, I liked it.
Okay.
4, Ghost Protocol, it was longer than I would have wanted it, but not, And we're talking about Tom Cruise.
God, that hairstyle is beautiful. Just flowing in the breeze of Dubai.
You talk about Tom Cruise and you hate your parents. You're like, why? Why could I not have Tom Cruise hair?
Well, do you have anything to plug?
No. I am plugless right now, but I appreciate you guys.
What are you up to these days? What's an average day in your life looking like?
I'm playing with something that I've been working on it for a while, and it's either going to be something really cool and different or not. So we'll see. We're getting closer. There's no middle ground on this one.
Well, if you need help with anything, you know who to call.
I appreciate that.
We will be there at the drop of a hat.
I appreciate that. And what you guys did, when I heard you were doing this, it made no sense to me whatsoever. And then now that I've heard what you've done, it's really amazing what you guys have put together.
You looked at Bird and you said, verify these guys. And he went, yeah, they're all right.
I think it was Ben Rosenblatt who was like first talking about it and saying, I was like, what? What's happening? And I'm flattered that you wanted me to be on because other than you and my mother, I can't think of anyone that would want to hear me talk.
No, listen, if you find that Drew Pearce script, come back on and we'll talk about it.
Well, have you had Drew on yet? I'm sure he has a copy.
Well,
we've worked on it.
He refuses to come on.
Yeah.
I was actually at an event with him and I said, you got to come on. And he said, listen, that project is so McQuarrie and Cruise that I have no business talking about it.
Well, that, as I said, that's 100% true. But, it's a journey that everyone goes on. It's just they're the ones who are able to they are the ringmasters, and they're able to hear everything, take what's working, take what's not working, keep pushing it forward. And, I think, Drew, like everyone else, definitely had their role and their part on the film.
Yeah, we would love to talk to him. Maybe one day we'll wear him down.
Have you had Jake on the show yet?
No. Is that Jake Myers? Is that who it is?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Hey, tell him to come on the show because we love the intro. if you can set it up.
You definitely have to have him, and you definitely have to have Helen Madrano. You know, a lot of these unsung heroes you never hear about are behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, that's what our show is all about.
And I'm telling you, that idea that someone is able, again, she was the production accountant who's able to not, we never once had a call from the studio that said, you know, you guys are hemorrhaging gas. Like, it's just moving things around.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show and also giving us several more episodes worth of context.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for including it.
Charles, I ran back to the podcast studio because I was worried that I wasn't going to get here for the wrap up, but I'm here. So
where did you just run to? Where did you go?
I was running for my life, Charles.
What happened? Why did you just run? What?
Listen, I owe some very dangerous people a lot of money, and they showed up. So. Listen, I'm back. We're back. We're back to wrap up Bryan Burk Part 2, but it was tough, Charles, there for a second. You know what I mean?
I don't know. This I gotta say, this is your worst coming out of an interview.
I'm trying to plus it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I commend you for your effort. Yes, that was great.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Well, what wasn't terrible was the gift that we received after talking to Bryan Burk. Do you want to tell the folks what this was, Charles?
Yeah, I got this package, and in it, a note with him. Okay, so, all right, we talk about it in the episode. The 4 dots baseball cap, right? The Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol logo, which we found out just a couple weeks ago. Clint Schultz was the one who actually designed the 4 dots logo that we've been obsessed with ever since we saw a picture of Brad Bird on set of Ghost Protocol wearing the 4 dots logo hat. We'll put it in our show notes. We talked about it ad nauseum, but we'll put it in our show notes again, a picture of Brad Bird wearing this hat. That's from very early on in this show, like 5 years ago, we've been talking about this hat. A few years ago, Seth Worley, who's a listener, he's a filmmaker, we appeared on his podcast actually at one point as well. Seth Worley sent us the 4 dots baseball hat. I don't remember how he got it, but he actually sent us the hat. We got the baseball cap. We have one. And so we've been on the look for another one. And we mentioned it in this interview with Bryan Burk that we were obsessed with the 4 dots. Okay, what we got in the mail was not a baseball cap, but it was better. Do you agree? Do you agree?
I agree completely, because let me paraphrase the note that we got with this hat, which said, "We inexplicably made winter hats. I don't know. Here it is." You know, he was like, I couldn't find the baseball hat, but we found this. We inexplicably made winter hats. Here you go.
And he must not remember the reason why they made these production hats they were winter hats, because they were going to shoot the snowmobile sequence that we've also been obsessed with for years and years. This was for the crew to wear in the snow for the snow sequence. So we got winter hats. It's like the old-timey kind of with the flaps, you know, that go over your ears.
Yes, and we both knew what it was from immediately.
Yeah. And so he doesn't even know. He didn't even realize what he sent us. And so, we're going to have to get a picture, I think, of us wearing these hats so we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll wait until it's 120 degrees and we'll both put the hat on and step outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you, Bryan. You are amazing.
Can't thank you enough, Bryan. That's amazing. That's like such an amazing culmination of us chasing both the Red Dots hat and the snowmobile sequence information for years to now get a winter hat that was made for the snowmobile sequence that never got shot at the beginning of Ghost Protocol with the 4 red dots.
Absolutely amazing.
So awesome.
Charles, you don't have to tell me what the Patreon is. The Patreon is over.
No, it's over. Well, hey, hold on. Before we get into that, that's a little tease. A tease for the tease. Okay. All right, so before that, I just wanted to say just a couple of things that he talked about that were really cool in this interview. He didn't remember that Harrison Ford was the big bad in Ghost Protocol, but I love the lengths that they would have gone to get Gene Hackman as the IMF secretary. He said they were going to go out and shoot it in his yard in the Southwest, wherever but man, it's like, it really is. I mean, obviously Tom Wilkinson is incredible. Love him in that role and everything. But it would have been interesting to see Gene Hackman, and he has not done a movie since Ghost Protocol. Even before, his last movie was Welcome to Mooseport in 2004. And Gene Hackman is still alive and has not made a movie since then.
Yeah, there was a picture of him on Twitter recently, and he's still living. He's still got the mustache.
Yeah, that legendary mustache. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then also just hearing about Martin Landau. Martin Landau almost being in Rogue Nation. That is just like heartbreaking. That said, he said the story shifted and they didn't need him anymore. And then he was the one who had to break the bad news to Martin Landau's reps, and he felt terrible. Man, it's just like Martin Landau, sadly, rest in peace, legend for Mission Impossible, for so many other things that he did over his career. I mean, he's just an amazing actor, and it would have been so great to have him in the movie series as well. And so I was bummer to hear that they didn't get him, but cool to hear they tried.
Yeah, we'll have to ask McQuarrie about this next time we chat with him.
That's a very good point. We need to ask him about that.
Anything else?
That's it. So yes, let's get back into it. So we're there. The Patreon is paused. If you are a Patreon member, you will have access to the old episodes for this month, maybe beyond as well. But you're not getting charged this month, and we just want to thank. We need to thank these Patreon subscribers so much for the years of making this show possible. It's been really amazing. There's, I guess, a new chapter coming that we'll talk more about next week.
Yeah, come back next week and we'll fill you in. Yeah, but very exciting things.
Very exciting news coming soon, and we can't wait to share it with you all. And again, thank you all so much for supporting us on the Patreon. Thank you all for listening for so many years.
Well, we'll be back next week, and you definitely want to tune in for that. So until then, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You could go to the website if you want, I guess.
Yeah, listen to all the old episodes, LightTheFuse-podcast.com. Check out the episode guide. Like we said, we redid the episode guide. It's very cool the way you can search now by alphabetical name or by crew position or just same old as the episode order. And yeah, go through old episodes. Check out anything you want from our old back catalog.
And buy a shirt if you still can. That's probably turned off by now too, though, so maybe you can't.
But
what do you think, Charles?
I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see. Yeah,
we'll see. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. And Charles, do we have any sponsors for this one?
We don't, because there's no more Patreon. But I do want to thank all of our higher level Patreon members for being there for us and doing that for all these years. And maybe I'll just list out all of them at that level. Why not?
Sure, go ahead.
Take them one last time for their support and helping us do this, make this show possible. These people are just amazing. Mark Mahan, Stan Hairstraight, Thomas Victorio, Winston Riggs, Matthew Costa, Eddie Santos, John Cudney, Nathan Lawrence, Derek Klingel, Sonia Miranda, our friends from Texas, and of course, Jacob from Holland. Thank you all so much for making this show for years, sticking with us and making this show possible for us. Thanks.
We're not going anywhere, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.